predator on wheels, vicious, powerful, unstoppable. It didn't just compete, it hunted. And then, the boss arrived to take the throne by force. A heart bigger than the competition. Pop the hood, and you're staring at a monster. A 429 cubic inch V8, one of the most powerful engines ever put into a production Mustang. Ford didn't just build a car, they built a weapon. 600 plus horsepower, a top speed of 155 miles per hour, insane for 1969. 0 to 60 in under 5 seconds. This wasn't just another muscle car, it was a street-legal missile. Every push of the throttle sent raw torque straight to the pavement. The race-tuned suspension, lightweight aggressive body, and 4-speed close-ratio manual transmission made sure that when the Boss 429 launched, nothing else could keep up. Most muscle cars were built for the drag strip. This one dominated both the strip and the streets. Once the tires grabbed the asphalt, it was game over. Why, it destroyed everything else. 1969 was a battlefield. Every American manufacturer was in the war, throwing their best muscle cars into the fight. The Camaro Z/28, the Dodge Charger RT, the Chevrolet Chevelle SS. Each claimed to be the king of the streets. But the Boss 429 wasn't built to compete. It was built to take over. Where other muscle cars had power, the Boss 429 had control. Most muscle cars in the late 60s struggled in corners. They were built for straight-line speed. The Boss 429 changed the game. Ford didn't just throw in a massive engine. They perfected the suspension, balanced the weight distribution, and gave it an aerodynamic stance that gripped the road like a race car. The power-to-weight ratio was ruthless. Every shift of the gear delivered an instant surge forward. Once the Mustang took the lead, it never gave it up. And then there was the sound. A deep, menacing growl that wasn't just noise, it was a warning. The Boss 429 didn't need to rev for attention. It made other drivers rethink their choices before the race even started. Competition never stood a chance. The Boss 429 didn't just beat its rivals, it buried them. The Camaro Z/28, left in the dust. The Dodge Charger RT, blown off the road. The Chevelle SS, never even saw the finish line. This wasn't just about being fast. This was raw, unfiltered dominance. No rules, no fair fight. Just a Mustang built to win at all costs. The rulebook, shredded. The competition, crushed. History, rewritten in burnt rubber and gasoline fumes. The monster never dies. 1969 and 1970 came and went. Muscle cars changed. The industry moved forward. But the legend of the Boss 429? That never faded. Even today, this machine is a symbol of untamed muscle car madness. Owning one isn't just about having a classic. It's about owning a legacy. One built on speed, power, and absolute dominance. The Boss 429 wasn't just a car, it was a statement. And every time its engine roars to life, that statement still echoes through the streets. The Mustang Boss 429 wasn't just a legend, it was a nightmare on wheels. Some cars are built to impress, others are built to dominate. The Mustang Boss 429, it was built to terrify. This wasn't a machine for the weak. It wasn't made for Sunday cruises or casual show-offs. The Boss 429 was pure, unfiltered aggression. A muscle car so brutally powerful that even experienced drivers had to fight to keep it under control. When you turned the key, the whole street paid attention. When you stomped on the gas, the pavement trembled. This wasn't just another Mustang. It was the kind of car that left a permanent mark on history. Now, let's talk about what made it so feared. The Mustang Boss 429 versus every other muscle legend. Boss 429 versus Chevrolet Camaro Z/28. Power isn't a game. The Camaro Z/28 was GM's pride. It was light, nimble, and handled well for a muscle car. But let's be real, when it came to a head-to-head showdown, the Boss 429 turned the Z/28 into a toy. Camaro Z/28's 302 V8, around 290 horsepower. Mustang Boss 429's V8, 600 plus horsepower when tuned. We're talking more than double the power. The Z/28 had the finesse for road courses, but on the street, On the strip? Against a Boss 429? It never stood a chance. Boss 429 versus Dodge Charger RT. Size doesn't win races. The Dodge Charger RT came armed with the 426 Hemi, one of the most feared engines of its time. It had 425 horsepower, a legendary reputation, and it was a heavyweight bruiser. But that was the problem. It was too heavy. Dodge Charger RT curb weight, 4,200 plus pounds. Mustang Boss 429 curb weight, 3,400 pounds. That's an 800 plus pound difference. The Boss 429 didn't just beat the Charger in a straight line. It embarrassed it. The Hemi might have been iconic, but raw numbers don't lie. When a Charger lined up against a Boss 429, all that weight meant one thing. It was watching taillights disappear into the horizon. Boss 429 versus Chevrolet SS 396. Torque doesn't mean dominance. The Chevelle SS 396 was a monster. It had 375 horsepower and a ridiculous amount of torque, making it a nightmare for most cars in a stoplight drag. But it had one fatal flaw. It wasn't a Boss 429. Chevelle SS 3960 to 60 miles per hour, around 6.5 seconds. Mustang Boss 429 0 to 60 miles per hour, under 5 seconds. The Chevelle was strong, no doubt, but the Boss 429 was just faster, lighter, and nastier. If you wanted a muscle car that felt like a sledgehammer, you bought a Chevelle. If you wanted a muscle car that felt like a missile, you bought a Boss 429, and missiles don't lose to sledgehammers. Boss 429 versus Plymouth Roadrunner. Straight line speed isn't enough. The Plymouth Roadrunner had one job: go fast in a straight line. That's it. No handling, no finesse. Just pure brute force muscle. And sure, with a 426 Hemi under the hood, the Roadrunner could launch off the line hard. But then what? Plymouth Roadrunner quarter mile, around 13.5 seconds. Mustang Boss 429 quarter mile, 12.5 seconds or less. In a pure drag race, the Boss 429 walked all over the Roadrunner. And when it came to handling, forget about it. The Roadrunner wasn't even in the same conversation. It was a one-trick pony, while the Boss 429 was the whole damn show. Why the Boss 429 stands above the rest. It's not just the power. It's not just the speed. It's not just the dominance. It's the fact that the Boss 429 had all of it. More power than the Camaro Z/28. More speed than the Charger RT. Better handling than the Chevelle SS. More than just straight-line speed like the Roadrunner. The Boss 429 didn't just win in one category. It won in every category that mattered. Muscle cars were built to intimidate. But when a Boss 429 pulled up, it didn't just intimidate. It ended the conversation. And that's why, to this day, the Boss 429 remains undefeated. No other Mustang was this brutal. Ford built many legendary Mustangs, but none came close to the sheer aggression of the Boss 429. Forget balance, forget refinement, forget being polite. This Mustang was built to do one thing: obliterate everything that stood in its way. On the streets, the Boss 429 was a threat to everything with four wheels. On the drag strip, it was a missile. And when it lined up against anything that thought it had a chance, it didn't just win. It made sure the loser never forgot what hit them. The raw experience behind the wheel. Driving a Boss 429 wasn't about comfort. It wasn't about convenience. It wasn't about luxury. It was violence on four wheels. The 4-speed close-ratio manual transmission wasn't forgiving. You had to wrestle with the gear shifts, manhandle the clutch, and know exactly when to unleash the next gear. The brakes? No fancy assists. Just pure mechanical stopping power that demanded precision. The suspension? Stiff, brutal, and ready to tear through corners at speeds that made other muscle cars sweat. The steering? It wasn't light. It wasn't easy. It was raw, unfiltered, and direct. This wasn't a car you simply got in and drove. This was a car that demanded respect. If you weren't ready, if you didn't understand what it took to control a 600-horsepower beast with no computers to save you, this Mustang would remind you, the hard way. Every rev sent a shockwave through the chassis. Every acceleration pinned you into the seat. Every shift felt like a detonation. Other muscle cars? They make you feel fast. The Boss 429? It made you feel like you were in a fight for your life. A machine that couldn't be tamed. Even today, the Mustang Boss 429 isn't for the faint of heart. It's loud, it's aggressive, it's a brutal, no-compromise machine that still outmuscles modern sports cars in sheer presence and power. Cars today come with traction control, stability assists, and electronic wizardry to keep them in check. The Boss 429 doesn't have any of that. It's just you, the machine, and the road. No filters, no safety nets, no limits. This isn't a car that adjusts to your driving style. You adjust to it. You don't tell the Boss 429 what to do. It tells you what's about to happen. And if you don't listen, you're just a passenger in a 600-horsepower bullet. It wasn't just a car. It was a declaration of war. The Boss 429 didn't just exist. It announced itself every time its engine roared. It wasn't about being a comfortable cruiser. It wasn't about being a stylish showpiece. It was a warning, a threat to everything on the road. This was Ford at its most merciless. This was Detroit muscle at its absolute peak. A car so powerful, so overbuilt, and so dominant that even today, it's feared. It's respected. And when one shows up on the streets, every other car knows what's about to happen. Because when the Boss 429 roars to life, everything else becomes background noise. The unmatched power of the Boss 429. The Boss 429 engine isn't just another high-performance motor, it's a legend in the muscle car world. Known for its brutal horsepower, unmatched durability, and race-proven engineering, it continues to dominate both streets and drag strips. Unlike many high-performance engines that compromise reliability for power, the Boss 429 delivers both. Built using Ford's NASCAR-grade FE block, it featured a forged steel crankshaft, lightweight aluminum heads, and an aggressive solid-lifter camshaft designed to push the limits of internal combustion. This was an engine that didn't just make power, it made history. Even at high RPMs, the precision-machined internals kept it running like a finely tuned war machine. Whether you're restoring a classic Mustang, building a custom hot rod, or looking for raw muscle, the Boss 429 stands out as one of the greatest American V8s ever built. A street-legal NASCAR monster. The Boss 429 was more than just a fast car. It was Ford's way of bringing NASCAR technology straight to the streets. Most muscle cars of the era were built with stock components that were modified for performance. The Boss 429? It was designed like a race car from day one. The chassis was reinforced to handle the monstrous torque. The lightweight front end kept the car balanced even at full throttle launches. The aggressive aerodynamics, low, wide, and mean, gave it an edge most muscle cars couldn't match. On the racetrack, Ford's 429-powered machines were already breaking records. In the hands of professional drivers, these engines were pushing over 7,000 RPM and dominating oval tracks across the country. Now imagine that same power, that same engineering, unleashed on the open road. It wasn't just a Mustang. It wasn't just a muscle car. It was a factory-built street racer disguised as a production car. Final thoughts. The king that never lost its crown. The Ford Mustang Boss. 429 wasn't just another Mustang. It wasn't just another muscle car. It was a weapon. A machine built with one purpose: to win. And decades later, it still stands as one of the most feared muscle cars of all time. It doesn't need electronics. It doesn't need fancy assists. It just needs a driver crazy enough to unleash it. And when that happens, the Boss 429 does what it's always done: rule the streets.